Right, on today's to-do list, drain the tank and remove the tank, forward controls off, but I also want to take the shocks off. Now, right where the shocks are at the minute is where it's on its lift. So what I'm going to do is, when I was taking the foot pegs off in an earlier video, I mentioned that there was a thing I was going to do. Basically, where the foot pegs screw in, I've got like some bars that I can screw in where the foot pegs were, which I can then jack the back end up and sit these bars onto like axle stands, and it allows me to take the jack out from underneath, which leaves me clear run then. I'm not just supporting it on the jack stand. Plus, if I need to jack the front up, with the back being on axle stands, I can jack the front up if I want to. So I'll just ratch out my bars and we'll get them put in. Basically, the bars are just a bar that's threaded on the end. Straightforward enough. Just screw into place. Just nice and tight by hand, you don't need to tighten them up with any tools. And the thread on these does come through just a touch, but not enough that it fouls the swing arm when the swing arm's going in and out. So when it comes to it, I can actually put the swing arm on and not have to worry that it's going to catch. And that's that, nice and solid. So I'll just get a pair of axle stands. And I'm not wanting it massively high off the floor. What I might do is just, looking at that wants to go up on the jack about an inch. I don't know if you can actually see that. I'll just drop this camera down just a touch. Yeah, it means that it just wants to lift up an inch. So I'll get the other. Right, and I'll just lift this up. Right, and as you can see there, the bike's sat on these bars and it's secure enough, it's gone nowhere, it's plenty strong enough. And the axle stands themselves aren't actually going to interfere when I'm working, like putting the swing arm in, etc. And regarding the swing arm, I went in yesterday. There's a bit of a story going on now with this swing arm carry on. When I ordered the kit, I ordered the axle and the swing arm. The axle arrived, and I went a couple of days later. I went on to check, because it come in two separate packages. I went online a couple of days later to check the tracking on the swing arm, and the courier up on their website had it on as package damaged beyond repair. So I couldn't find out any information at all. So ended up having to put an eBay claim in. And got refunded. So I then ordered another swing arm, again from America, and through no fault of the sellers, obviously the courier that had damaged the first swing arm, that was in this country, it had already arrived in this country, but it was damaged while in transit apparently. Anyways, the second swing arm, I went on last night to see where that was, and the tracking updating on it hasn't been updated for 14 days. So I contacted eBay just to see what the crack was, and was immediately advised to put a item not received claim in. Basically the fucking second swing arm's gone missing. So I'm not having much luck with swing arms at the minute, but having a ratch last night online, I've actually found a company in the UK that can actually supply me with a proper swing arm. They deal with DNA, so when I get my refund through for this second one, I'll buy a new swing arm from this country, and hopefully it'll fucking not take long to get here. So my next step is I'm going to remove the shocks. Now, as you have already seen, the shocks at the rear end are already off, but what I'll do is I'll knock you off for a second, and I'll take you off this tripod and I'll show you underneath where the shocks come off, because I've got to take them off at the bottom. So I'll knock you off for now, I'll be back in a minute. Right, this here is the end of the shock. Shocks go through to the swing arm there. So you've got one bolt here, nut, and one nut here. Now what I should have said when I was taking the swing arm off, before I unbolted the swing arm, I actually cracked these nuts to loose, so they were loose. So basically it's just a case of take them off and the shock will come out that way, and then that's the shocks off. So I'll knock you off, get you back on the tripod, and we'll get these shocks off. Right, back in a minute. Right, get under here and start winding these off. There's that torch. What I've got to keep on off is the shock itself. Right, what I've just done there, because these are still a bit tight, I've just knocked the shock bolt out of this end, because I'm going to put like an adjustable spanner holding the end of the shock so that it won't turn It's still a bit tight to just grip it with my hand. So I'll just get a spanner. Hopefully one that'll open up enough. What I'll do is I'll just turn the shock to suit where the spanner's at. Right, that should allow us to carry on and doing this. I thought that might happen. Right, and it's undone the lock nut on the shock itself, and it's not advisable to just wind that straight off because it'll spring on you. So I need to set up or should I say ratchet out another spanner, short spanner that fits onto the lock bolts. I'll show you what I'm talking about. When I get the shock off, I'll show you what I was on about. But I'll just knock you off for a minute while I get some tools sorted out. Right, I got a bit carried away then. I've actually undone the bolt. I'm going to show you what I was on about that came loose. So basically, as I say, I've got the bolt off already. Basically, you just lift your shock out. Now what you've got, I'll just get all the bits, where it mounts in your frame, obviously that's the bit that mounts the swing arm. That pokes through a bracket on the bottom of the frame. That's also in on the other side of the bracket. It's like your rubber mounts, and then you've got that nut goes on the end. That nut goes on the end. Now what was happening when I was turning that to loosen it, because it went tight, it was actually turning the whole, see how that come loose there? It was just turning the whole thing, winding it off. So what I've done is I put the spanner on that bit there and then wound that off, because that held it tight. Well, that turned for so long and then locked, and then that comes off. But what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be stripping the shocks down, one to clean them, but I want to have just a good look at them, make sure they're alright. They're actually Showa, which is a lot on a lot of Harleys now, Showa forks and stuff, but the Showa ones. But I might, depending on what's in there, I might put a set of progressive springs in it. But But yeah, that's off anyways, and that's how they come off. If you have the problem higher, sometimes you can hold that end of it, this end of it, with the spanner, like just put the spanner over there so it can't turn, and that nut will just come all the way off. But I think what's gone on here is that hasn't been tight enough, and it's cracked itself loose while we've been turning it, which has allowed the whole lot to turn. So, but yeah, if you put your spanner on the bolt up at that edge, it locks it all up, allows you to take the nut off, and then it just lifts out. So I'll knock you off and I'll get the other one off. They're also marked, these by the way. Normally they're marked. Let me have a look a second. No, the last few that I've done have been marked left and right. But to be truthful, I don't really think it matters, because they're both doing the exact same job. You know, they're both bolted to the same swing arm and they're both bolted at the same place on the frame. But never to worry. Right, as I say, I'll knock you off for now. I'll get the other shock off, and then we can have a look at them at some point. And then after the shock's off, I think the next thing is I'll drain the tank, and we'll get the tank off, and then on to forward controls. So, right, back soon. Right, I'm going to drain the fuel out of this tank. Got a jerry can, just a small one, sat on some woods on this side. And I'm going to do it the old fashioned way and just siphon it out. So, the pipe into the tank. Now with this, basically you just suck it. Most of you will know that, like. And that's draining now. So it'll probably take a while. I don't know how much fuel's in there. I know it's not empty, but I'll knock you off, and then when I come back that'll be empty, and then we'll start taking the tank off. So I'm back soon. Right, drained all the fuel out of it. Well, nearly all the fuel. Be a few little dregs left in there. The next thing, we'll take this the centre console off. Take the front screw out. Now these are Torx on this thing. Put the screws to one side. The Torx size for this is Torx 25. And that should just lift off. just flip her over. There's a few connections to disconnect under here. Usually pretty straightforward to pull off. And this one, just pull the rubber off, get to a little screw. And then you can lift the dash panel away. Just stick this down here out the way for now. And for some reason that strip always seems to stick to the tank and not come off with the dash panel. So on the little reset switch on the side, just screw that back on and just shove the rubber back over so it doesn't get lost. And then that whole lot, unplug the pump as well, and the whole lot can just sort of hang down out the way at the front. Now on the fuel tank, there's another connection. If we can get to it. Is the connection for the fuel gauge, which just disconnects under the tank here, and then obviously there, push it up and release the actual fuel line. And now should just be able to unbolt the tank and take her off. Now there's a vent pipe here which you can just pull off on the front of the tank. As I say, just pull that off out the way. And then you've got your crossover, your balance pipe that's on the bottom side of the tank, but I always take that bit off last. So, bolt at the back end of the tank, whip that off. Rightly. I might need a long reach for this. I can't remember whether the standard socket fits over there because they've got a pike nut on this end. Oh, got it. Make sure it's just not spinning right through, which it is. So, just grab a socket spanner. Take the nut and the washer off this side and then just push it right through, and it's just one big long bolt. You can see just there, it's just one big long bolt that goes right through. So just stick that to one side for now, keep it safe. Right, the next step, I should be able to get my screwdriver in there. Just had that a sec ago. What's that doing? Right, I'm just going to undo the Jubilee clip on the bottom of this on the bottom of that pipe. It's been a bit of an arse to get on. Might be able to get on it with a proper driver. Handy, proper Jubilee clip driver. Allowing me to take that straight off. Just, it's like a screwdriver, but it's got a hex end in it that fits on the Jubilee clips. Right, I'll lift the tank up. Pull it off at the front. And then once it's up and out of... Now if it's lifted high enough, you'll find that the fuel has gone to the back end of the tank. So when you pull the balance pipe off, see, that's gone tight. And there's still petrol coming out of it, so tank off. Just lean that down there. Right, there was a bit of fuel spilled out of that. It's almost inevitable. So, wipe up the worst of it. That's pretty much it. I mean, it'll evaporate away. The little bit that's spilled out, it'll evaporate away, as I say. Just, you get a stink of petrol for a little while. But I've got the garage doors wide open at the minute, so it's not as if I'm going to get high off the fumes. So yeah, that's the tank off. So the next step is I'll knock it off and I'll actually drain the rest of the fuel out of this tank into just a container. I'll use it to clean stuff. But probably next step will be taking the forward controls off. So I'll just knock you off for now. Back soon. Right, I'm going to take the gear change side off. Forward controls first. Now there's a couple of things on this side. side stand is bolted on to the main sort of plate. You have to take that off first to get to one of the bolts that hold the forward controls to the frame. Now I had to make a bracket that went on the back side of that plate and bolted on to these two bolts on the front of the side stand bracket. So to save time, I've already loosened these nuts off on the back. I don't know if you can hear them rattling about there. They're already loose, but I can't get them off because the bolt's too long, it's too close to the frame. So when I start winding these out, them nuts will come off the back. So we'll do them first. And strangely enough, there's 4 bolts in this bracket, and the 2 bolts closest to the primary are 732 Allen head, and the 2 on the front, I'll find it, 1/4 inch Allen head socket size. So same bolts but different size heads on them. Right, as I wind them both out, I have to just put the stand down a sec. I'm just winding them out a little bit to start with, because that should allow us to, that's one of the nuts off the back and the plate, that's the other one just fell off, and the washers, so they can go on top of there. And now I should be able to remove that plate, which then allows us to take that's the plate that was on, and then it allows us to take the spring off as well. So now what I can do is just wind all 4 bolts out, and then the side stand will come off. But these ones were longer because obviously, as I say, they went right through, so that I can bolt that little plate on the back to hold the spring on. A little bit on the tight side, obviously because they had a bit of Loctite on them. Obviously didn't want them coming loose. That's one out. They weren't Loctited into the plate. What it was right on the end of the threads where the nuts were on the back. I put a drop of Loctite on that bit. Well, as that bit starts to come through the plate, that was where it was going tight. So, swap sockets and take these other 2 out. And then that should enable us to lift the side stand off. So then I can get to the bolt that holds the forwards to the frame. So as you see in there, that's the side stand off. And now I should be able to undo these three bolts. Now this normally wouldn't be a big issue, but I spaced my foot pegs out by an inch, because this primary has got spacers in it, so the primary is all spaced out by an inch. And I found when the standard foot pegs were on, your foot was right up against the primary. You know, it just wasn't comfortable, so I spaced these ones out by an inch so it was comfortable with my foot. But I also had to extend this top bit and make a big spacer to go in the top, so that the gear rod wasn't sitting at a stupid angle. So that's another thing that, because of the length of the bolt, I'll have to basically take these off so that I can unscrew this bolt out the back. So I'll just get them off first. Basically, as these come off, they'll get probably one of the spacers will drop out. So that's the spacers that I had in, and it's the same on both sides. I spaced both sides out by an inch. That one out. That's that one out. And as you can see there, the forwards are just hanging off now. So, take this bolt off, nut off, sorry. And I can't remember what size the wasn't that one anyway. Handy. It's a quarter. So hopefully I'll have enough. Dick. I'll have enough space that I can just take that out. Right, that's the forwards off on that side, spacer off, and then push the, and again spacer in the longer. What I'll do is I'll put the nut back on that so I don't lose it, and I'll have to find the original shorter bolt for that, unless I space the other forwards out, if you know what I mean, the ones that were on it to start with. If I put the inch spacers in them, then I'll be alright using the inch spacer in that bit again. So that's the gear change side off. So I'll knock it off, we'll get to the other side, and we'll take the what you call it off, the brake pedal side. So I'll be back in a minute. Right, you can see there, got an Allen key sitting in the back of it. I'm going to take the master cylinder off first. So, Allen key in place. Now the thing with this one is, once you've got it loose, you can actually just unscrew the foot peg, because it just comes straight through the master cylinder. It's quite a long bolt on that one, and then the front one obviously just screws into the master cylinder, but it's a shorter one, so So little bolt comes out, and then I should also be able to then just pull that off, which I just have. Which I'll just move it out the way, which enables me to get onto these ones. Now it's the same crack with this side as it is with the other. I've got the inch spacers, but the bottom back bolt, I can't get my socket on it, so I have to do it with an Allen key. So that's that one out. I don't know if you saw that, the spacer just dropped out. Right, so get my Allen key. I did loosen this before I started with the rest of it. So it's quite straightforward really, getting the brake side off. So that's that side off. The only thing left to do now is get the brake line off, and what I'm hoping is that I can actually just pass the whole lot, including this, through the back. But now I've just seen that bit, I don't think I'm going to be able to, so for now I'm going to call that. I'll probably just unbolt the caliper and everything, drain the system out. So yeah, for now that's me done as far as stripping down goes, apart from taking the brake line off. Until I've got a swing arm, I can't really do now else. I can sort of strip the shocks down and clean them up and give them a check over. I can put the tyres on the wheels, but I can't do nothing else until I've got that swing arm, because that's the central part of it. I can't even line anything up. So for now that's going to be it. Right, I'll have a bit of a weigh up what I want to do next, and I'll catch you later. Okay.